Overwatch 2 is a massive problem in their most recent patch balancing update that I think could call for a hotfix, because this could absolutely break the current game and its meta. So if you guys watched my last video, I ranked all of the best characters I thought were going to be meta in Season 3, and my number one pick was none other than Hammond/Wrecking Ball. Now, at first, this was seen as a hot take at the time, because Hammond was always seen as one of the bottom picks for tanks in a pool of some insane metas throughout the past few months, with characters like Orisa and of course Roadhog dominating the game. However, now a week has passed since Season 3, and I think it's safe to say I was right about Wrecking Ball being one of the best heroes in the game now. In fact, I think he probably needs to be nerfed in a hotfix soon because he's that good. So if you didn't know, Hammond in the past patch replaced 150 of his normal health with shield, reduced his pile driver ability by 2 seconds, and also his Minefield got an arming time buff from 1.5 seconds down to 1. Now, if you couldn't already tell, this is a massive buff, and they basically improve every single mechanic inside of Wrecking Ball's arsenal. However, I think most people can agree that this buff is way too much for Hammond. See, for starters, as I mentioned in my last video, the pile driver being decreased simply allows for the player to jump in on a team and smack down on them more often, which is a pretty massive buff on its own. And even worse, now that a large portion of Hammond's health is based in shield, he doesn't need to be healed nearly as much as he used to. You see, the thing that was initially put in place to keep Hammond balanced as a hero was that he was super mobile and can attack the enemy team with complete ease. However, without a constant stream of healing, it was hard for him to have much success, because whether it be a sleep dart or a stun of some sorts, it was really easy for Hammond to find himself in troubled situations that would call for healing assistance. It's why people didn't use him all that often. He was just really vulnerable to getting killed. However, now with this new change, you can basically forget even needing a healer at all, because as the YouTuber Flats pointed out in his video on this topic, now with just one big healing pack and some shield regeneration time, Hammond can regain a good 80% of his health just by waiting around. That's with literally no healing at all, and doesn't even consider the armor that he could put on himself as well. Now, I think you could see what's wrong with this buff. It essentially removes one of the biggest things that made Hammond somewhat of a balanced hero. The fact that he could so easily become vulnerable if he wasn't managed perfectly by the player and the healers surrounding them. But now just hiding away for a few seconds can heal him to near max, so he could basically play entirely independently and not have to worry much about ever getting killed. And additionally, let's talk about the Minefield timer buff, because this is debatedly worse. Now, I will be the first to admit that I think Wrecking Ball's ult for a while now was rather underpowered. It didn't do all that much damage, and it was relatively easy to get away from. However, once again, that was their way of balancing his ultimate and making it work in the current landscape of Overwatch. You drop his Minefield on a point or something, and while the enemy team had plenty of time to run away, it was still a massive obstacle for the enemy team, especially if they were trying to contest a point. But now that the mines take a lot less time than before to detonate, Hammond has the ability to use this Minefield offensively and essentially obliterate the entire enemy team just by flying above them and dropping mines on them. They don't really have time to run away or anything like that anymore, because within a second of you dropping them, they've already been bombarded by 20 mines that surround them. It essentially just screws over any low mobility hero like Cassidy or Bastion, which I think is a massive flaw, especially since those types of heroes already struggle in a faster paced 5v5 meta. All of these massive changes just make playing against Wrecking Ball a massive sigh, because you realize you're about to be in a game of absolutely no fun. I know nobody really liked playing against Wrecking Ball before this update, but now it's just a constant game of trying to kill this annoying ass ball swinging around the objective for 20 minutes before he just heals real quick and restarts the entire process over and over again. Plus, now that he has a ton of offensive power, if you're a low mobility hero or any type of healer in general, you're literally just screwed. Hammond will sit there and rush you guys constantly over and over again until you either end up switching heroes or switching games, because it's an absolute mess. I understand why they'd probably want Wrecking Ball to be somewhat usable in this game, because he really is such a fun character to play as, but this buff was just far too much, and now it's miserable to play against. In their developer comments on this change, they said that Wrecking Ball received some of the fewest changes in the transition to 5v5, as he proved to be one of the most effective solo tanks in early testing. Well, if that's true, Blizzard, then why the hell did you buff him more than any other character in any other patch now? This is very clearly similar to the Doomfist situation in Season 2, where they accidentally made him far too powerful and then fixed him in the next week. But for some reason, I don't really see anybody talking about how broken Ball is currently. Maybe it's a bit too early and people just haven't realized yet, but Wrecking Ball, especially as as time passes is going to start dominating the meta as we know it today. And I really think, similar to Doomfist, he needs to get some sort of change soon before we fall into another meta where a character is just blatantly broken. It seems like every season now there's always at least one tank who is far, far above the rest in terms of power. And I mean, to be fair, it does make the game a lot more interesting in the long term, but in a simple game-by-game basis, Blizzard is making characters like Hammond way more powerful than every other tank, while at the same time actively disencouraging players to switch heroes during the game and counter the enemy team. Meaning that all it leads to is more people wanting to play the meta heroes rather than trying something new and keeping the game fresh every playthrough. I know some people hated the Roadhog meta and the Sojourn meta that's arguably still ongoing, but trust me, we don't want a Wrecking Ball meta. I genuinely think this could tear apart the comp space if this lasts too long, just because Wrecking Ball prides himself not in being the highest damage character or the best character ability-wise, but rather just by being as annoying as he possibly can. I hope Blizzard look into this, but check out the other 4 characters I thought were going to be meta here for Season 3. Subscribe and peace.